So thank you for staying on, and I heard some awesome discussion. I wish I knew more. I really do wish I knew more and I could give you the answer, but I also know that searching for the answer is a bigger answer than an answer. Like having the mental focus on this and the attention on this is actually the answer. Yeah. Much more than you think. Like, then what? Okay, nice, it's pink. But to grapple with it and go, where does my vow sit? If you make a promise, and these are holy promises about turning my samsaric world into nirvana, meaning my world, my experience of the world, my reality. I understand reality isn't fixed, even though I can't experience it that way. In moments of calmness, where I've meditated and understood and searched, I can see how this world is not the way it seems, and it's produced mostly by my mind and the nature of my mind and the karmic seeds that come with it. And if I just had different karmic seeds, if the thing creating the reality I experience as my reality were different, if I knew what those things were, I could produce nirvana. Understanding that then says, okay, if I can't quite figure that out because I'm not at peace enough or focused enough or don't know the code or the manufacturing of tickets enough, then you go to a doctor, an enlightened being, a doctor of mind, and you say, well, what's my, you don't call it receipt, you call it what's my prescription? Thank you. Yeah? In Spanish, I think it's receipt. Receta. Okay. Receta. You take your receta, and so you go to a being who is in that state. Say, how do you get to that state? And they say, keep your morality in this way. And the 10 non-virtues, the main blockages for humankind are these things. The impulse to destroy life, the impulse to take what's not given, the impulse to be improper in relation to another, etc., etc. You remove those, and you remove from the highway to nirvana the obstructions that gets you to realize you were always that being anyway, that clean, that open. Anyway, I digress. There's this, I'm going to use the example of if you are a female person, and it's interesting how much sexual energy is addressed in the Vinaya, and we'll talk about it, I'm not sure next class, but I think the class after, when we talk about the kinds of people that can take vows, and grow vows, and don't grow vows, etc. What nuns take and what monks take, why there's different numbers and so on. There's something about this energy of the gender male and the gender female that have particularity around it in the Vinaya. So we're going to use the example of a female person going through a flawless process to fully ordained nun in this case. Yeah? But the same applies for monk. The reason we're using nun is because they got an extra intermediate nun's vow. And I've tried to find out why, because it was bugging me, yeah? And I haven't found out why. But I've got a Dharma rumor, yeah, I can share it. So, besides practicing one day vow as a practice to keep vows, the first step might be to take a live person's vow, right? Which are 5.
No, stealing, lying.
Killing, stealing,
lying, sexual misconduct.
and yeah. Plus, advices on refuge. In other words, doing that with awareness of wisdom in your mind, with emptiness, understanding of wisdom, because there is no statue that's going to save you. You see, it's not like I take refuge in the Buddha, I'm about to get a mental affliction and a statue of a Buddha appears and you're saved. That doesn't work. There's nothing like that. There's no Buddha standing up in front of you going, you're saved. Yeah? Sure.
a little confusing to me that they try to ban drinking, but some great Rinpoches are alcoholics.
Some great Rinpoches might be alcoholics, but they might not be alcoholics. I don't know for them. All I know is the Buddha said, if you drink so much as this much of alcohol, you cannot call yourself a Buddhist. Spoken in the Buddha. Yeah, so maybe they're not drinking alcohol. I don't know what they're doing. I really don't. Yeah. But since we're on alcohol, why is alcohol such a thing? Why? I mean, is it evil? Is alcohol evil? Is the substance evil?
Is it alcohol or is it intoxicants?
Good, because it says alcohols whether brewed from it says intoxicants whether brewed from plants, meaning alcohol, or chemical or others. Yeah. Yeah, it sort of removes your capacity to attain. Yeah, because you're not in charge of your mind. So if that one is out of control, if the driver is out of control because it's too lax or unfocused or has a blurry perception, you're unlikely to have the capacity to attain the other things that you're trying to attain. So and that's what I said at the beginning. It's not easy, but it's possible. So if that's true, okay, if it's possible to be free from suffering, if it's possible to reach a state of nirvana, if it's possible to wake up Buddha, if this is possible for you, not just for some historical person or some other person with funny hats, for you in 2014, it's possible to see the world perfect, and you as perfect. If this is possible, then is it worth the effort? Well, how much effort? Right? How much effort should I put into permanently removing a samsaric cyclic existence? And this is a hard question, because I know for me, there were times in my practice, 17 years of trying this thing, I didn't have the stomach for it. I'm like, screw it. It's like, duh. You know, and in the trial and error, in the falling and getting up, you learn. You learn. You learn one way of being and another way of being. At least I've got two ways of being. Is it worth the effort? If it was really possible. If you believed it was really possible, how much effort would you put? And what if you had to say, okay, I'll grow in my mind, I'll grow in my mental formation, the energy of protecting life, the energy of telling truth, the energy of holding unions sacred. If I hold in my mind this, if I grow that, if that becomes the chain of events that produces my reality, like we did in the meditation, instead of a darkness, instead of a negative affliction, you have this unstoppable seed that turns you into nirvana. If I grow this, would you do the effort? Like, how much effort is that worth? You know? And for me, sometimes it wasn't worth it. Sometimes it's like, I want to have fun. Fun, which then disappears, and you know, like, because I've lost focus. So, to address alcohol, it just loses that focus, if nothing else, right? Okay, sorry, digress again. I'm a little passionate today. So what would be the next point if you're a female wanting to get to this flawless, so there's a flawless way of getting fully ordained nun, and not so flawless, right? There's a recommended way and not recommended way. What would be the next step after you've taken a lifetime laywoman's vows? Huh? Let's have a look if you're right. First, you make a commitment, they say, to leave the home life. You have this, I make a commitment that I'll take some lifetime vows, but then you do a novice nun's vows, excellent, which are what we discussed, the 4, the 6, and the 3. Sometimes it's just 10. What would be the next step? Javier told us this. Intermediate. Yeah, cool. We did it, which are those 13 vows we just talked about, and then they get another 12, which are divided into 2, I think. Yeah, the primary 6, and then there's the secondary 6, which are usually all I know about these primary 6, which are the additional 12 to your original 13 if you're a nun. Does that make sense so far? Are that it's to do with the way you behave around closed doors with another male, with that energy in the room. It's something to do with that. And the secondary things is about what you eat and etc. etc.
What is digging?
Yeah, digging in the ground.
They're not killing insects and having like an extra sharp awareness about what you do on the planet. Yeah. So it's see how they're getting finer and finer and finer in your awareness. And then you do another commitment, which is to observe celibacy at the end of your 2 years as intermediate. You make this promise to observe celibacy before taking full ordination, which is the full nun's commitments, and we'll cover that in 10 minutes. Yeah. So this would be the flawless way. Sometimes people get lay persons and intermediate at once, or they might get intermediate and novice at once. Novice and intermediate at once. It's funny, I looked up nuns on the Google thing. I must have stolen this image of someone else. Yeah, I don't think I did. But do you recognize this lady? Yeah. Who recognizes this lady? Who's seen this lady before? She's the guard of the stupa in Nepal. For those of you who just came from Nepal. The first picture that came up when I went to Tibetan nun, this lady pops up. And she's, every year, I've been there since 2008, 2010, 11, 12, 14. She's sitting in the same location, giving people blessings. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, she's one of the 108 lives.
Every time I see her, she's like yelling at people.
Yelling and asking for money. Yeah. That's also a blessing. So I just want to talk about the two. So the primary 6, which are more serious, and the secondary 6, which are less serious, which is what I just covered, right? The A and B. So this covers now intermediate nuns out of the 8. Okay. I can't remember what else I got for you. Now we're going to go. Okay. A little bit more detail about fully ordained. For nuns, there's 364. For monks, there's 253. And you can get sexist about it, or you could say they can get to perfection much better than males because they have the capacity to focus way more than we can, or something like that, right? I don't know how to address that. And here I'm going to cover, I think, why I looked up that Dharma, like why is it that nuns get those intermediate vows and not monks? Like why the hell is that? Because it's, from a Western perspective, it's so sexist, right? That's what my mind popped up. And it was interesting because the Dharma rumor that I got, which I can't confirm, I guess you might couldn't confirm it either in the text, but he's what I got it, is that if you're a female making these vowed commitments and you may not know you're pregnant, it would look really weird if you're in a nun's robe and you have a big belly. Yeah. So to say that, it's not in scripture that we were able to verify, but that's the closest I can give you to an explanation. It sort of made sense to me that, okay, say for 2 years, you're probably not going to have a bump. And it might look weird for a nun to walk around with a bump. Okay, so that's to address the intermediate. But here comes what I call the 5 falls. The group of all the fully ordained monks and nuns I call the falls. And these are ordered in. There's no other. I try to also look at why they are broken into these names and so on. But there's some reasons for the names, but I couldn't figure out other than levels of seriousness why they're grouped this way. So all the 364 for nuns and 253 for monks are divided into a first group, which is the most serious, called the defeat or the defeated. And this correlates to the first 4 of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, etc. nuns have 8. I don't know how they're divided, and monks have 4. The second group that make up the great 5 groups of falls for fully ordained monks and nuns are called remainder, because even if you've transgressed some of these 20 vows for a nun or 13 for a nun, there's something still left over for you to fix. So you can still fix. You didn't totally break it like you might have if you had done a defeated downfall. Does that make sense? No, like I'm talking too many languages. There's 5 great groups of vows for fully ordained monks and nuns. I don't know them because you only know them if you become ordained. You know them.
In your secret.
Huh?
They're secret.
Until you become ordained. But we're able to get a general grouping of these because this is in the text. Yeah. So the first, the most serious group are called the defeated, or these are serious offences that if broken, some believe, not the Madhyamika Prasangika Tibetan Buddhist philosophy believe, but some believe you completely lose your vows if you break this first group of 4 for men and 8 for women. If you do any of those, some groups believe you lose your vows together. The Tibetan tradition believes you damage them a lot, but they're repairable. Yeah, so that's the first group of the 5 great groups of vows, which that 5 group is all of the monks, nuns, and vows fully ordained. The next group is what's called the remainder group. This group is called remainder because in these vows, and I don't know what's in them, even if you break them, there's some goodness still left that you can repair it. Does that make sense? That's why they call that. The next group is called downfall because if you do them, you're likely to have a perception of the lower realms, and there's 213 for females and 120 for males, and these are give up downfalls, which refer to things you have to give up. And the example here is cloth. You commit to not keeping a certain amount of cloth other than what you need to use for your robes, etc. And if you keep it for longer than a certain time or more than a certain amount, you need to give it up. You need to return it. You need to give something physical back. So there's 213 of those for women and 120 for men of stuff that you have to give back because it shows you getting some kind of attachment in your subtle nature that you're trying to build through keeping vows. And the next group within the downfall group is called simple downfall because there's nothing you have to give up. They're just there's nothing you have to return, it's just an action you have to do. The next is stuff you individually confess, and this is less and less serious than the ones above. And the last is I did bad. I've got a whole bunch of very, very small things that you have to keep your awareness on. And don't forget, these are all of body and speech only. Okay. So that's the best breakup I can give you that's online if you're interested, but you're probably way more informed about when you see a monastic walking around, if they're fully ordained, and some are not. Some may have the robes and they might be intermediate nuns or might be novice monks and so on. If they're fully ordained, they have to keep these 364 or 253 things in their mind on a regular basis as best as they can to generate a state of nirvana. So then out of those, that mountain of commitments you make, your job every 2 weeks is to sojong it or repair and purify, which implies we're breaking these things or coming close to breaking them. So what they call a civilized land from a Buddhist perspective is a land. One way of defining it is a land where sojong, or the practice of confessing your broken vows between your fellow monks and nuns or your fellow dharma, happens every 2 weeks or twice a month. And you sit in front of each other, and there's a formal ceremony, but the intent or the essence of that formal ceremony is to sit down, and certainly in the wording of the ceremony it says, I broke this, and I broke that, and I broke this. And at the end they ask you, is there anything else? And it's not like a confession like I would have thought confession is. It's a genuine and true trying to repair the damage you did to your own mental continuum by not observing the promise you kept. So you made. So you made a promise with a motivation, and your attention on that promise becomes your life, becomes your way of life. And so to keep them and grow them, you get together on a regular basis and you say, let's repair the ground that these seeds are on. So this is a thing called sojourn. This got an intermediate monk, morality, growing close. I think that's it, except for I want to show you one little thing.
So is there some kind of sojourn for non-domestic sheep?
Yeah, good. We can talk about it more later, but in essence, the quicker. So here's this, right? I promise. I'll make a vow right now. I promise that between now and when we leave in 5 minutes, I will not exaggerate. I broke it before I finished saying it, right? Because I knew that I couldn't do it. Damn it, I should have chosen another one. So now I'll sojourn that by saying my intent really was to try and tell you the truth and to genuinely give you an example of how to repair a broken promise, but I failed at it because I realized my motivation wasn't pure at the beginning. So, but there's something that happens in sharing this very personal manipulation of your mind, the taming of your mind, the failures and successes, with a group of people that share the same values. So do the sojourn. Or if you're a lay person, you go to your lama, you go to your teacher, you go to your nay lama, you go to your best dharma friend, and you make it a practice, a beautiful practice, to say, I have these vows, I'm failing at this terribly, because A, you have a kind of shame about having to say, I lied, I cheated, I gawked at the person across from me on the train, and I knew they were with someone else, and I was having visualizations of blah, blah, blah. The more detail you get, the more attention goes to that karma. And the point is, if it's a negative karma, if it's a transgression or a breaking or a downfall from one of your promises, you want to confess it or you want to share it, you want to open it up as quickly as possible because that releases something in you. In being in front of someone you highly value, you're terribly embarrassed of saying these things in front of, that will then add to you keeping the vow. It adds to the way you keep it. For at least the next sojourn, I don't want to go and sit in front of my lama or my friend or my teacher and tell them the same thing next week because they'll think I'm an idiot and they won't have any faith in me. And there's something in us that says, I better not do that over and over and over. So in sharing with each other a beautiful confession is a difficult practice, but it's a beautiful purification, mainly because it stops you from doing it again and again. But also it relieves you from keeping the dirty little secret in your own heart growing vines across your magnificent forest of samsara. Yeah. When you find out what can make a fully ordained nun, for example, and that tradition has been lost in Tibet, and there's stuff about that I want to talk about, but there's instruction about who can give ordination to a nun or a monk, etc. And one of the things is it's got to be a civilized land. I said that earlier, right? And a civilized land, from the Vinaya point of view, refers to a place where one of the ways you can answer that is it refers to a place where a community of monks and nuns are doing sojourn, doing this purification of vows every 2 weeks. They're getting together, and this land is a civilized land. And then there's a almost civilized land where not 12 people are doing it, but 6 people are doing it, and that's sort of civilized, and that's enough to ordain monks and nuns. So it's interesting to recognize the idea of civilization, not in material things, but in morality towards each other as beings. And beings that are trying to keep a morality that doesn't harm other beings is considered a civilized land and not a barbaric land. And so it's very beautiful to read that beings on the planet that take care of each other are considered civilized, and that are trying to make that an active thing are considered civilized. So that's what I'd say about that. Let me share, I think, 2 minutes of the 3 jewels, because this is a magic and holy place. It's been around for 18 years. We're moving the 3 jewels, and we need you to help us move the 3 jewels. We're moving to a new location, yet unfound. So if you find a perfect location, we're looking. Ground floor, storefront, big enough to perhaps a little coffee shop at the front to get tea, juices, and come hang out in Dharma, yoga, and meditation. And this is a presentation that Geshe Michael's taking to Singapore at the moment to us, our Asian friends, to help us fund the 3 jewels, because we need moving money, relocation money, but we also need reprogramming, new volunteers, a fresh look and feel, etc. And if you like what we get here, if you enjoy this open place, I get to teach my class here on Thursday because of the goodness of people like Michael Wick, who's kept it going on his own, from his own pocket for 20 years. Seriously, yeah? So I want to share with you so you can get a feel of, this is just one thing that happens here, and see if you're willing to help in whatever capacity you can, either looking for space, looking for ideas for fundraising, looking for new programming, getting awesome teachers, thinking of whatever you can to try and see if you can fit this vision. Your goals. I don't know if it's going to work. That's you. That's me. Not the one in the middle. And this is a few months ago, so the schedule is a little different. Sorry, internet theft.
gotta say what they want.
There we go. So please help the 3 jewels become the new 3 jewels. Help Stephen make an awesome new volunteer schedule and new programming. Help us money, time, energy, location. Yeah. Before we go, let's meditate. Let's offer and dedicate. You.
Sashi
Pugi Jushin Metotram Viral Minchi Ninde Ngemari Sangye Shindu Mite Guwagi Roku Nanda Shimla Shepar Sho Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Yasayami
Gewa
Digo Sunam Yeshe Satsakshin Sunam Yeshe Lejumwe Dampa Kuni Topa Sho. And if there's any goodness that came out of your hearts today, in your minds, any goodness at all, if you could just throw it all the way to the Middle East and the Ukraine and every part of the world that is not having the fortune and leisure we have here today. May they find peace in their hearts and may we help them. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.